this video, I'm going to show you how to use your flash to fake golden hour, going from this to this. But more importantly, I'm going to break the process down into 5 simple steps and show you what can go wrong along the way. My name is Pi, and I'm one of the founders of Lynn and Jersa Photography and SLRLounge.com. We're teaming up with Adorama to bring you a new series of photography tutorials called Master Your Craft right here on Adorama TV. So let's dive in. What's up, friends? My name is Pi. Welcome to Adorama TV. Okay, I've done faking golden hour videos before, but this go around, I wanted to make kind of the ultimate reference guide. I want to make this not only very simple, 5 simple steps, but I also want to cover from shoot to post to give you some tips and best practices and what could go wrongs along the way. You know how I like to do? I like to get straight into this. And by the way, when we get to the editing section, I do have an exercise file for you as well. But let's go ahead and start with number 1. I want you to visualize the scene and, more importantly, where the light or the existing light is coming within that scene. So let me go ahead and walk you through this shoot. So I'm actually in Arizona, and this is a shoot that I was doing with MagMod. They're the lighting accessory company. And when we walked into this field, I thought, what a great place to demonstrate sort of how to recreate golden hour, because as you can see, as soon as we go to the field, not only was it late in the day, so the sun was already setting behind the mountains, but we also had kind of an overcast day. So the light that we're getting is kind of what you see in these images, where we don't really get that golden sun-kissed look on the grass, which I thought would look incredible. But in visualizing the scene, what I want you to do is to set up your subjects and to imagine placing the flash in an area where the sun would actually be, right? In looking at this scene, we can still see that the scene itself, even though there's clouds, it's backlit, meaning our flash would need to come from the same direction of that existing light. Now, I don't care if the sun is down or if it's just above the horizon or if you have overcast, there's always going to be a direction to that light. So I want you to visualize and to see what that direction is, and it's going to give you an idea of where you need to place the flash. Side note, all the concepts we're about to discuss, they come from our advanced lighting workshop in our lighting series. It's a 4-part workshop series. This one comes from Lighting Workshop 4. With that, understanding where the existing light is in the scene, we go to step 2, and this is setting up the light. So what do you need for this effect? I would recommend a medium to high power strobe. That means that you want something along the lines of 200 watt seconds up to 500 watt seconds. If you have it all in one, that's great. But what I'm using in this scene is the Godox 8200. There are several different brands and versions of this exact flash, but it's a 200 watt second flash. And I'm using the Mag Shoe. There's this MagMod dual adapter that basically lets you place 2 of the 8200s next to each other. This turns it into basically one 400 watt second light, or 400 watt second light source, but 2 lights. So I've placed it into that adapter, and I've added 2 CTO gels. So over each flash, you're going to place a CTO gel. Now, CTO stands for color temperature orange, and all it does is it shifts the color of your flash over to orange. That CTO gel simply shifts the color balance. All that means is, well, a flash is normally 5500 Kelvin. That means that it's daylight color balanced. When you place the CTO gel on it, it turns it to 3600 Kelvin, or just warms up the flash. It makes it more orange, okay? So we place the color temperature orange flash over both these. Okay, within our mag ring, that's the adapter, we now have 2 Godox 8200s, both with CTO gels and placed on a stand. By the way, can you do this with just one flash? Absolutely. You can use one Godox 8200. You can use a Profoto B1 or a B10 or whatever you have that is a high power light source. The benefit of having, let's say, 400 or 500 watt seconds is not only can you cover more area and distance, which I'll kind of tell you why that's important in just a second, but also you can run it at lower flash power. And this gives you the opportunity to basically shoot more and to be able to have quicker recycle times. Okay, now let's go to step 3. This is placement of the flash, and this is one of the big what could go wrongs, okay? What you want to do when you place that flash is you want to place it deep enough into the scene where it's covering the entire background of your image, or covering the entire scene itself. This shot right here, by the way, you'll notice my good friend Jared Gant is actually helping me in these to place the light source. And as always, whenever I do that, I like having Jared pose with the couple. I feel like thruples are necessary for every good couple session. And case in point. Okay, I've placed the light source, and there's a couple things to understand here. We visualized the scene and we looked at where the existing light is coming from, because the first thing that I want you to do is to place the light in an area where the sun would be coming from, meaning that you're following that natural light, the existing light pattern that you visualized, that you saw in step number 1. This means that we're placing it quite deep into the scene, and I'm also raising the height. So you can notice that in the photograph, the height is around the tree line. So when I get low and I'm kind of shooting, it looks almost like the sun might be coming through that tree line. Okay, I'm setting it up so it looks convincing. But the problem right here is you'll notice that it's not really covering the entire scene. This is the first what could go wrong, is when you place the light source, we haven't gone far enough back to cover the entire scene with light. So when I'm shooting wide angle, you notice that this kind of area of grass to the left and to the right, it's not really being covered. The way that you fix that is you take the light source back further so it covers more of the scene. The only issue is the further back you go, the more power you need on those lights. That's where 400 or 500 watt seconds can come in handy so that you get more power in scenes like this. The other option that you can do is simply crop in, and ask your friend Jared to step out of the shot. But once we're cropped in, that no longer becomes a problem, right? Because now all the foreground grass and background grass in both these shots, or in this shot, is covered with light. In fact, if I go to the entire set, let's pull up the set right here, you can see that here it looks like a flash, but here it looks like natural light. And same thing as we kind of scroll through and you see in all the close-up images. So look, here's some more close-ups. Let's look at each of these. Okay, when you place these side by side, it looks like we've covered the entire scene simply because we're controlling our crop. So what are you going to do? If you only have, let's say, a lower power light source, you're not going to be able to move it as far back, and you're going to crop in tighter to not show as much of the scene. The higher your power of light source, the further back that you can move it, and the more wide you can shoot because you can cover more of the scene. Okay, we're not done yet. Now that we've placed the flash, let's talk flash and camera settings. Usually when I'm doing this kind of effect, I'm going to start my flash power at full power. Okay, I'm going to start there and I'm going to dial it down. But I want you to actually begin with your camera settings. What I want you to do for camera settings is actually set the camera to where you have a nice ambient light exposure. I want it to look natural. I don't want it to be super dark. And this is another big what could go wrong, is I see people setting their ambient light exposure too dark. So notice that this is the raw file and you're seeing the ambient light exposure at 1/500, f1.4, and ISO 50. It's still fairly bright outside and I'm still leaving my baseline exposure pretty bright. Then I'm adding flash over it. So when you see the raw file with flash now, I'm adjusting the flash next after I've set my ambient light settings. And so because I'm using 1/500 of a second, I'm setting this to high power or high speed sync. And I'm probably shooting around, based on the distance and the flashes that I'm using, it's probably like 1/4 to 1/2 power. So probably 200 watt seconds of light at this distance. Okay, so it's a good amount of light. It's fairly a lot of power that we're putting through those flashes. But always set that ambient light first and set it to be bright. We want it to look natural, and so it needs to be bright as if it were daylight, right? Or as if we had golden hour coming through. Now when that flash pops, you get this beautiful kind of golden hour light source where the flash is firing into the lens and it kind of warms up the image. It has that warmth to it. It looks really, really nice. Let me just show you a couple of these images because there's one other tip that I want you guys to keep in mind that goes along with the shooting aspect of it. And that's your positioning. So what I want you to notice is when you see these shots go, so I did a kind of before and after so you can see the flash with and without. Notice that the framing of the flash within the camera is usually in a spot where I would naturally frame the sun. So here it's kind of to the left and out of the frame. Then as we continue, here I'm using it slightly within the frame, just like I would the sun as well. This is what the edited image looks like that we're going to go into in just a second. But in each of these, I'm kind of controlling the placement of it. So even here, I'm controlling the placement right at the edge of the frame where I would want that sunlight to be. it's set up to look natural. And that's what makes it so when we go to the editing side, it's going to look very, very convincing. So now let's go to the final piece. We're going to go to step 5. We're going to talk a few editing tips. I have a couple exercise files for y'all. This would be a great time. If you haven't already, you can pause the video, go to the description of the video, and download the 2 DNG raw exercise files. Should be this one as well as this one. We're going to cover a couple quick editing tips. For baseline editing, this isn't a Lightroom tutorial. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use Visual Flow Modern Pack. This is where you don't have to be using Visual Flow. Just apply a baseline look of your choice. Could be a preset that you have made yourself, could be something you've purchased. If you want to check out Visual Flow, that's totally fine as well. I'm going to apply the Modern Pack Soft Light, which gives it this kind of nice bit of warmth to it. And I'm going to adjust my temperature and my tint a little bit, pulling the tint just down a little and the temperature maybe up a little bit. Actually, right about here looks really nice. And I'm going to get that right level of brightness. This is where some of the first editing tips are going to come in. One of the things that I like to do is I'll add a little bit of vignetting to the image. This was shot at f1.4, so there's some natural lens vignetting. And by the way, I'm using these tools to do this, but if you don't have Visual Flow retouching tools, you just go down to the effects and you can just pull it in, -10, bring the midpoint all the way in, and some roundness right there. This is just a quick way of doing it so I can adjust up and down, and get to the right look. The next piece that I do, and this is the same thing, this is a radial burn, but this drops it in as a radial filter. So if I press Shift M, it'll select that filter. And if you're not using the toolkit, once again, you're just going to go and create a radial filter, drop it in the center of the image. Well, you would just place it over the subjects, but the tool just drops it in the center and you move it to where you want it. This just pulls down the exposure by another 0.5. What this does is it brings attention to our subjects, but it also reveals a little bit more of the natural light characteristics of that flare they're coming through. I just like the way that it kind of highlights our subject, but also reveals that flare. But notice that the flare here, if this were actually sunlight, it would bloom a little bit more. Blooming is where the highlights kind of transition in a more smooth way. It kind of blooms around objects. And so we're going to help it out. I'm going to give you guys a brush preset. I want you guys to go to your masking, create a new mask, select brush, or you can press K to get there. Go to the effects, and you're not going to have this setting, so I want you to save it out. If you have Visual Flow retouching tools, one of the special effects tools is this sun flare. If you don't, that's okay. Just pause the video, dial in these settings, and save it as a new brush preset. And you can thank me in the comments because this is an awesome one. With your flash placed, using a fairly large brush, use the brackets to increase or decrease the size of the brush. I'm going to make it pretty large. I'm going to click right on the flash. What this is going to do, and I'll press O to turn off that overlay so we can see the actual effect right now. There we go. What this does is it basically enhances an existing flare. So holding Alt or Option, I'm going to click on the brush and I can pull back to the left to basically reduce or increase the strength. And what I'm going to do is just kind of land somewhere in the middle, kind of increasing the strength of the flare. And you'll notice that the stand almost kind of blends into the scene at this point, where I could remove it, but really it's not going to be that noticeable. That's the main thing that I wanted to point out, is that ability to kind of enhance the flare a little bit, right? As well as the radial filters. So same thing over here. Watch. This was the image that I showed at the cover, right? Getting there is very, very simple. Watch. I'm going to go soft light. We do have, so when with our presets, we set up for lighting conditions. So whenever there's a flare, we actually have that lighting condition. It's set up as backlit. So I'm going to choose that, brighten the image, lower the contrast a bit, and it's already almost good. The only thing I'm going to do is grab that same little brush and I'm going to drop it right over the same spot. So we're going to go to SFX, Sun Flare, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to decrease the size of the brush a little bit, drop it right in, and then we're going to pull back. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust this back, holding Alt or Option, pulling it back to right about there. And look at the before versus the after here. It's kind of wild, right? And if you go back to, this is the fun part. If we go back and I'm just going to compare this back to the original, look, this is what the scene looks like without that flash. And you might be saying, well, no, it's your preset, right? No, because watch, I can apply the exact same thing. So if I apply Modern Pack to this same thing, right? We'll add a little bit more warmth, get the right contrast, everything. they look very, very different. If I put these side by side, one of them clearly looks like it was shot during golden hour. The other one was kind of just overcast. And both are fine, by the way. This is just a different look and a way to get to something that doesn't actually exist. But that's it. I want you guys to have these tips because recreating golden hour is a powerful thing, not only from the aspect of just, well, as a photographer, being able to control light and being able to do things that your scene doesn't naturally give to you, but as a professional photographer, being able to impress and wow your clients by something that doesn't exist to the naked eye. Hopefully this was helpful. If you guys enjoyed how I like to teach, then be sure to check out SLR Lounge workshops. Like I said, this was one small piece of our advanced lighting workshop, Lighting 4, which is one of 4 different lighting workshops that cover everything from A to Z among our entire library of A to Z education. And if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, comment below, let me know what you think, ask questions. I read all of your comments, I get ideas. And of course, as always, you know what to do on YouTube. We'd love for you to subscribe to the channel, subscribe to Adorama TV, and turn on notifications if you want to be notified each time one of our awesome creators posts a new video. That's it for me. If you want to follow me, you can find me at PyJersa on Instagram. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.